We will go ahead and get started this evening. Ready? So if we could start with the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor Burke is absent this evening. Deputy Mayor Dexter.
Here.
Councilmember French.
Here.
Councilmember Kidd.
Here.
Councilmember Meredith.
Here.
Councilmember Moran.
Here.
Councilmember Sherman Lauren.
Here.
City Manager McKean.
Here.
Attorney Boyd.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Jim, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
So we have a couple of ceremonial matters this evening. We have two proclamations, and we're going to start with the proclamation in honor of the Port Angeles High School Career and Technical Education students. And it looks like Ray Delacat has a presentation for us.
I do not have a presentation,
just have
but that's
pictures.
okay.
We just have pictures. Okay,
We
excellent.
do, we have a little slideshow. I got to meet these students about 8 months ago, and they came forward to me about doing a new welcome sign on 101 West. And that was a great project, a big project, but to watch them grow and power through this project and go to state competition with it has been a joy. And I think everyone has seen the sign when they drive by. It looks gorgeous. They're still working on it to this day. Mixing that with some different colors, but just super proud of these guys, and I know the Parks Commission is as well. They were highly engaged in this process, so it was a blast. So why don't you two come on up? Mariah could not be here tonight, so it's just two of them.
All right. We'll stand over here in the middle. Come on.
Oh, perfect.
Okay, so I have here a proclamation in recognition of Port Angeles High School Career and Technical Education students. Whereas on September 21st, 2017, Port Angeles High School Career and Technical Education student Glenn Deckard approached the City Parks and Recreation Director regarding a community service project for his high school cabinet making class. And whereas his idea was to create a beneficial project that would not only represent the skill sets of his class, taught by Mr. Tim Branham, but also a project that would represent the community for years to come. And whereas the idea was to use a computer numerical control router, also known as a CNC shop bot machine, to design and cut a new Welcome to Port Angeles sign located on 101 West to replace the old rotting sign. And whereas Glenn Deckard expanded his team for the project by adding talented students Mariah Fortman and Sawyer Larson, the students immediately met and worked with the Parks and Recreation Department and the Parks, Recreation, and Beautification Commission on the design of the sign. And whereas the students qualified for and competed in the Skills USA state competition and traveled to Yakima on April 19th through 21st, and whereas, although the student sign project did not place in the top 3 at state, the students represented Port Angeles High School with class and dignity, while at the same time learning people skills and how to work as a team. The students gave an impressive, stellar performance and interview on the KONP Todd Ortloff Show. And whereas on May 25th, 2018, 8 months after the conception of the project, there was a ribbon cutting and unveiling of the new 12-foot-long cedar welcome sign that was placed along Lincoln Street outside of Jefferson Elementary School. And whereas the sign also included a greeting phrase in the Klallam language, and the celebration was accompanied by tribal chairwoman Francis Charles and other Lower Elwha Klallam tribe members who sang and gave well wishes as the new welcome sign was unveiled. Now therefore, I, Kate Dexter, on behalf of Mayor Sissy Brooke and the City Council of Port Angeles, do hereby thank and recognize Glenn Deckard, Mariah Fortman, and Sawyer Larson for all of their efforts to bring this tremendous asset to our community. Thank you. We also have a Pride Month recognition, and I'd like to welcome anyone who's here from Peninsula College with Sophie Agu to come down to the front, if you'd like. We didn't talk about this part. I just put him on the spot, sorry. And anyone else who'd like to join? Anyone in the audience who would like to come up? Thank you. All right. This evening we have a proclamation in recognition of Pride Month. Whereas the Port Angeles lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual community continues to make significant contributions to the fabric, stability, and well-being of our community. And whereas roughly 4% of the U.S. population self-identifies as LGBTQ, and even more who are questioning or not yet public with their identity. Whereas with the population of Port Angeles, somewhere between 19 and 20,000 people, many community members identify as LGBTQ. However, this group is often invisible as individuals may hide their sexual orientation or gender identity due to fear of discrimination or lack of safety. Whereas Pride Month is an opportunity to celebrate the contributions that LGBTQ people have made in Port Angeles, as well as acknowledge the challenges that they still face with regards to visibility, acceptance, and inclusion. Now therefore, I, Kate Dexter, Deputy Mayor of the City of Port Angeles, on behalf of the City Council of Port Angeles and Mayor Sissy Brooke, who could not be here tonight, do hereby proclaim June 2018 to be Pride Month in the City of Port Angeles. Pride Month is a time to affirm LGBTQ people are welcome in Port Angeles, and that the city supports their right to safety and freedom, and encourages all residents and visitors to join in celebrating the spirit and dedication of this vibrant and diverse community. Thank you. Thank you very much. Hand that back to him later. Thanks. Okay, before we get to the public comment, we have a staff person to introduce. Who would like to take care of that?
Council, I'd be happy to take care of that. Tonight, we'd like to introduce our Interim Director of Public Works and Utilities, Steve Clark. Steve has over 30 years of experience in the public sector and over 10 years of experience in the private sector. Steve was the Public Works and Utilities Director for the City of Maple Valley for 10 years, as well as worked for the City of Burien and Capital Construction Manager for the City of Issaquah. We want to welcome Steve this evening. We're extremely grateful for Steve stepping up to help out the city in this time of need.
Thank you, welcome. Would you like to say anything? You don't have to, but if you'd like to.
I'm not sure I understand how to operate.
That's the first thing we'll teach them.
Okay, sounds good.
Well, being a Washingtonian and having been over the peninsula many times and been through Port Angeles, and also being a Burien boy and having grown up with Jack Pettis and that area, and been working with Jack over the years with the APWA, American Public Works Association. I got to know quite a bit about Jack and his experiences, with the city of Port Angeles. So I know this is really a very cool town, and I really am honored to, even for a short while, to actually be over here working and helping you all out during this interim period.
Excellent, thank you so much for being here. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our public comment period. I have a few people signed up this evening, so we'll start with them and then move on to anyone else who'd like to make a comment. First on our list today is Susan Hilgren.
Hello, I'm Susan Hilgren and I live at 12 Pierce Road. And I do need to apologize, I made a statement last time I was here and it offended somebody, and I certainly never want to offend anybody ever. So accept my apology, please. But Nathan, we're going to talk about trash cans and bathrooms and sharps containers. But I have a good idea. You guys know the commissioners, and they actually have some power over some 2163 housing money and service for homeless. You might want to put in like a RFP for like $25,000 that would cover the cost of those for next year, because it's really a huge service that we do need. And a few of you were asking where they could find stuff on Facebook about people talking smack. Well, Stop Enablement is starting to talk smack about people who are running for positions, and they're talking about Kathy. So for some casual reading, you might want to go look. That's up there. About 100 years ago, we had a port, I'm sure, that started, and there was probably two kinds of boats there. They probably had like a rowboat or a canoe and maybe a big tall ship. That was 100 years ago. Now they have lots of different boats, and they have lots of different ways that they moor them, and they have lots of different ways that they address them, and they don't just call them boats. They have really different categories. Well, that's kind of where we need to go with this homeless thing. We maybe only had hobos back in the day, but we have huge categories of them now, and we really need to be able, when we're talking homeless, to be able to identify the different ones. And I'm going to make up some little bookmarks that have categories, and so when we're talking about these, we can be a little bit more familiar, because we have unemployed homeless, the ones who are there because of domestic violence, veterans, death of a spouse causes homelessness, health issues, developmental disabilities, mental health issues, addiction issues, PTSD trauma issues, fetal alcohol, chronically homeless, unemployable, drug-induced psychosis, and every one of those need to be treated separately. They cannot be put all in the same bunch. And so we really need to break it down and identify how we're going to help them and what we're going to do with them. And even when we talk about when we're helping them, styles of housing, we can't just put them all in the same thing. It's not going to work. So we do have some can live in tents, overnight shelters, cars, RVs, group homes, Oxford homes. We just have to really keep looking at different ways. But thank you guys.
Thank you. Steve Hopkins is next, and for anyone else who's on the list or wants to speak that hasn't done it before, just a quick reminder that the procedure is to state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes to speak, and the lights will give you an indication of how your time is going. Thank you, Steve.
My name is Steve Hopkins. I'm the Operations and Planning Manager for Collin Transit, and we're located at 830 West Lordston Boulevard here in Port Angeles. I'm here to let council and the public know that the Washington State Department of Transportation is currently working on an update to the previous Washington State Intercity and Rural to Urban Public Transportation Network Plan that was last done in 2007. It's a study that's intended to include an updated inventory of the Travel Washington intercity bus services, which would be like the Dungeness line, intercity bus services that are operated by private for-profit firms like Greyhound and Northwest Railways in Eastern Washington, and also regional connecting services operated by transit providers such as the Straight Shot by Collin Transit. They're hosting a series of community meetings, and the original list of meetings did not include Port Angeles. The nearest meeting was originally scheduled to be in Aberdeen, which for those of us who rely upon public transportation is not an easy to access location for a meeting. And so WashDOT was very receptive to our feedback, and they've scheduled a meeting here in Port Angeles. That meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. Tomorrow, the 20th of June at 4 o'clock at Burn Community Center. It is an opportunity to share your thoughts on where expanded services or support for services should go for intercity public transportation, and they are quite eager to hear feedback. So if you're able, please attend that meeting tomorrow at Burn, June 20th at 4 o'clock, and it's put on again by the Washington State Department of Transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Christy, and I apologize that I can't read the last name, but it looks like the first part starts with an L.
Kristen Warren?
Oh, Kristen Long, yes. Thank you.
I don't know. She went
actually before me.
So we'll go through the sign-in list and then we move to the next people. I have Susan Homan, Steve, Gail Wheatley, you're right. Thank you. Sorry. I can read most of the time.
I'm Gail Wheatley, and I'm the pastor of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, and that's at 510 East Park. So I'm here just to thank and congratulate the City Council on designating June as LGBTQ Pride Month. As a faith community, we are very supportive and are grateful for that designation. And St. Andrew's is what's called a Believe Out Loud congregation, which is a designation among faith communities that says that God loves everybody, with no questions asked. And as I have learned over the years, it's different to be welcoming from affirming. Welcoming is great, but sometimes in a church community, welcoming means come on in and we'll help you fix yourself, repent, get your act together, change, do whatever that is. And an affirming community says, you know what, you're perfect just the way you are. And so we're very proud of that. And so I would just like to read in what we had to write for our Believe Out Loud designation for integrity. It says, St. Andrew's Episcopal Church is a reconciling, affirming, and inclusive Christian community, striving through worship, love, and service to welcome all people just as God created you. No matter where you are in your journey of faith, no matter your relationship status, our welcome knows no boundaries of age, race, ethnicity, culture, gender, identity, expression, sexual orientation, family circumstance, economic condition, physical or mental ability. We believe that God delights in the diversity of creation, and so do we. So thank you to City Council for this designation.
Thank you. Okay, now Kristen Milana.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Kristen Milana Baumann, and I'm pastor at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, and that is at 301 East Locust Avenue. And I am also here to express my gratitude to Council for declaring Pride Month. I believe that it is extremely important for every community that all people can feel at home and are not discriminated against. And it is not only important for the members of the LGBTQ community, but for all of us. Because none of us can really thrive if we leave people behind. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Bob Freeland.
Bob Freeland, 520 East 10th Street. The Seattle Times, last Thursday. Above the fold headline, Arctic ice melting 3 times faster than it was in 2007. That follows on the heel of a study and report of that study in the April Scientific American that the ice in the Arctic will have all melted in the summer by 60 years sooner than they thought would happen, 2040. This was covered in the PDN, and one person in that article said that he thought it would be 2030, not 2040. I just got this in the mail today. Living with Fire, Flagstaff, Arizona undertaking multi-million-dollar experiment to protect the city from fire and flooding. Think it's not going to happen here? Think again. The city of Port Angeles participated in the climate preparedness plan that was completed in 2015. That plan said that sea level rise, flooding, and forest fires are likely to happen in the next 30 to 50 years in Port Angeles. Now we can wait and dilly-dally and wait till something disastrous happens and then try to figure out what we're going to do. But I think it'd be a whole lot better If we start thinking about it now, because climate change is coming, whether you like it or not, it's going to change our lives, whether we like that or not. I think we need a plan in Port Angeles for the impacts of climate change.
Thank you, Bob. Next on the list, we have Sophia Gu.
My name is Sophia Gu. I live at 903 South Albert Street, and my pronouns are she, her. I wanted to thank City Council for supporting the recognition of LGBTQ Pride Month. And I wanted to talk a little bit about allyship. So I'm an ally to the LGBTQ community, and part of that is around not being neutral when seeing issues of discrimination, but also places where we can affirm people's identities and how they contribute to our society. There's a quote from Archbishop Desmond Tutu that I wanted to read, where he says, "If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality." So I think as allies in this community, it's really important for us to recognize places where our neutrality is oppressive and think about ways that we can support marginalized communities, whether it's LGBTQ people or people of racial minorities or other identities that need to be supported more in order for them to feel welcome here. Thank you.
And last on our list is Alex Matlock.
I'm Alex Matlock. I'm a student at Peninsula College and the co-president of the Rainbow Alliance at the school. And I just wanted to thank everyone for the LGBT Pride Proclamation. That means a lot to us as a community. Thank you.
And can you just quickly state your address for the record? You can use the college address if you're more comfortable with that, since you're representing a group on the campus.
I live at 71 June Place in Square.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else who would like to come up and speak? So we have one more, we have a public comment period at the end as well, but, okay. So moving on, we are at late items, and I understand staff has one.
Council, we would like to pull number 8 from the consent agenda. We will bring that item back to a future council meeting, but we want to pull it from tonight's agenda.
Okay, and does council have any late items? Does council have any late items? Okay. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. I will read that. First, I'm going to take a sip of water. So tonight's consent agenda is City Council minutes of June 5th, 2018, the expenditure report from May 26th to June 8th, 2018, in the amount of $1,444,119.40. The Port Angeles Forward Committee appointment. Number 4, final acceptance of E Street Reservoir PRV station. Number 5, release of utility easement. Number 6, final acceptance of Tumwater Bridge rehabilitation project. Number 7, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointments. Number 9, designation of voting delegates for AWC annual business meeting. Number 10, update to the Port Angeles Municipal Code 13.65. Number 11, Wengler surveying contract extension and amendment. Is there any?
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, I'd like to pull items number 7 and number 9. And from the consent agenda.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so do I need to read it again with those items pulled? No. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with items 7, 8, and 9 removed?
I move as written. Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just say that if anybody had questions on number 3, Port Angeles Board Committee appointment, Councilman Kidd and I did have an interview with that gentleman.
Okay, so do I have a motion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the consent agenda passes. So let's go to number 7, Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
I'm sorry, can I reverse it? I just have a quick notation for number 9. Let me get that out of the way.
Okay.
It's so easy. So that's on page E95. It just basically says that at the AWC meeting that the deputy mayor and council member Schroman Warren will be our delegates, voting delegates to the AWC. However, the AWC allows 3 voting delegates from each city. And at the time this was printed, they were not aware that I was also attending.
Okay, you are.
So I would also like to be a voting delegate, so round out 3 delegates from Port Angeles.
Okay.
That was the change I wanted to make.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
I would move that we designate Deputy Mayor Dexter, Councilmember Sean Warren, and Councilmember Kidd as the City of Port Angeles' voting delegates for the annual AWC business meeting.
Second.
Go ahead. Second.
Any discussion? Thank you, Sherry. Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
So now we go to E34 and
So now we'll do number 7.
number 7.
Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointments.
Right. So the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee appointments, there are quite a few. We got quite a few volunteers to apply for this committee, which is, I'm very pleased. But some of the members who were overlooked and some of the members were appointed, I have concerns. There was an application from Mark Abshire, who is the executive director of the Port Angeles Regional Chamber of Commerce. And Mark is well experienced in lodging tax funding, how it should be applied, and he is a professional at marketing and creating. He's aware from the inside out the importance of different festivals and events and their attraction. This is the whole purpose of Lodging Tax Advisory Committee is creating heads and beds, bringing people from out of town to specific events, and he's also an expert in creating new events. So for us to overlook his application, experience, and expertise to serve the city, I'm a little disappointed. I'm a lot disappointed that we haven't enabled ourselves of his services. And then I'm looking at the opportunity to appoint Ryan Mullane of the Blackball Ferry System. Ryan is well-renowned expert in marketing this area, our peninsula. That's what he does. He's a highly experienced, highly paid professional at marketing Port Angeles and the peninsula as well as Victoria, and he's brilliant at what he does. The members of this committee serve the city for free, and to have that type of expertise available to us and not to use it. He has been on this committee and he has helped to guide the committee with his knowledge so many times, and in the past we have had requests. We get requests well over $100,000 in requests, and we've been given a budget of $70,000, but it's at his urging that we agreed to raise it to $85,000. So he has really done a superb job in serving the city on the Lodging Tax Committee. And the other people are, everyone that applied are excellent people, but not with that quality of expertise in our community. Miss Christine Lowe has applied. I've never met the lady. She sounds charming. She works as the communications director for Santa Cruz County, which is in California. She does volunteer. She's been a campaign manager to Kate Dexter. She volunteers with the YMCA. She's involved in being a local volunteer, but her level of marketing expertise falls below that of Ryan Mullane and both Mark Abshire. So I'm just concerned that we are not using the highest qualified people with experience in lodging tax for our city. So I really can't support the new recommendations.
Any comments?
I'd be happy to speak to that as one of the 3 council members who is on the ad hoc committee. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. As one of the 3 council members that was on the ad hoc committee that looked through the applications and made this recommendation to the rest of the council, I can address those 2 folks, and if there's other people specifically, I'd be happy to address them as well. So we had a lot of really great applicants, and I want to thank all the applicants because it's a lot of work to make these decisions, and it's hard work as well. One of the things that made my decision around the funded organizations category, which Ryan Mullane and Mark Abshire are both in, was that Ryan Mullane has served on this committee for at least 4 years, and I think his contribution has been well noted, and specifically in the Vertigo marketing contract, which about 1/3 of the money goes to, and I think that's a wise use of that money based on what I understand at this time of Vertigo. And so I see that we've hired experts on marketing through this contract as well. And so I don't mean to undervalue Ryan's support and his work, but I also value having term limits, and that term limits aren't required on this committee. It's a year-by-year position, but recognizing that Ryan's been on the position for at least 4 years, considerations for me. With Mark Abshire, again, I welcome his expertise, but my concern there was that as the Chamber of Commerce is very involved in a lot of different organizations and a lot of different events and other things going on in the city, I was concerned about him being conflicted out of a lot of the decisions. And if that's 1 or 2, that's one thing. If it's the chamber being involved in so many different things, I don't want him to basically be an empty seat for the critical decisions of the group. So those are the considerations for me in not selecting those 2 candidates, although I totally agree with you about their qualifications.
Jim?
Yeah, I would have to echo Sherry's sentiments on this, and I appreciate the concerns, and I also appreciate the work that went into selecting these individuals. And again, I read every biography also, and all quality folks. Some of them are very light on their backgrounds in Port Angeles, and some of them are very light on their backgrounds in marketing and reception and reception funds, and also the ability to create certain events that would attract. Remember, this is the idea behind this is to spend money to bring money into the city. The people that were selected, again, whereas they were all quality individuals, their backgrounds on attracting the type of events that would be germane to and beneficial to Port Angeles, I feel are very light compared to a Mark Abshire or a Ryan Mullane, certainly. So I also will not be supporting the recommendations of this ad hoc committee for this reasons also.
Any other discussion?
So Mark Abshire is certainly someone who has a great vision for Port Angeles. I do agree with Councilman Sherman Warren that since the Chamber of Commerce runs a lot of events, events is basically half of what that committee does. And he, I think, just will be conflict of interest out of half of the committee work. So, he's someone who I know he has a leadership role in our community in this area, in tourism and business development. But to me, the fact that those conflicts of interest, the chamber runs events in almost every season. So that one, I see a lot of the logic of saying, hey, we have other people that are qualified, that are eager to do this work. And I do think there is some value in different perspectives. That also obviously has to be balanced against the experience that people gain by serving on a committee over years. Would it help us, I know that we don't have a motion on the table. Would it help us to break this up? Because it seems like I think we all agree on category 4 and category 5. Well, I guess category 5 we don't have to act on. But category 4, I don't think there's any discussion on those 3 names, David Mather, David Shargle, and Michael Martin. Am I correct in that? Those are.
Is that just for clarification, that category is not who we're talking about, right?
Right, so the only category that there's any sort of disagreement on is category, the 2 members who are persons involved in activities authorized to be funded by lodging excise tax revenue.
Yes, number 2.
And I guess that's the other point that I would make on Ryan Lane is it seems like other people fit the definition of that category better to me.
He's category 3.
Right, the authorized to be funded by lodging excise tax revenue, right? That's. Yeah. So to me, I felt like Kristen Lowy and Mark Cole fit that category, or sorry, Kim Reynolds, correct, yeah, fit the definition of that category better. So I guess that I'll just make a motion to confirm the recommendation of the Council Ad Hoc Committee, finding Robert Roots, Mark Cole, Kristen Lowy, Kim Reynolds, David Mather, David Shargle, and Michael J. Martin for terms ending February 28th, 2019.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all those in, yes, there is?
No, he was clarifying that I made the same recommendation that is on our.
You read the recommendation as presented. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, no further conversation. So all those in favor of the recommendation, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passes 4-2. Thank you. All right, moving on to other considerations. First up, we have follow-up to council think tanks, and Nathan is going to walk us through the issues that require some action.
Madam Deputy Mayor, this evening there are 3 items as follow-up to your think tank from last week that staff would recommend, if these are items that you choose to follow through with, that we receive motions on each of those 3 items. The 3 items that would require a council motion and action were 1, the creation of a policy review committee, 2, a request to the Planning Commission on an alternate truck route analysis, and 3, the creation of a housing task force. I do have some additional comments at the time that you're prepared to discuss the second item relative to the alternate truck route.
Okay, well, let's talk about the policy committee first. I can address that since I was at the meeting. The recommendation was made during the think tank to form a policy committee, and we did have 3 volunteers. That would be Councilmember French, Councilmember Shulman-Warren, and Mayor Brook. However, recognizing that there were only 4 of us present at the time of that conversation, we wanted to open that up to all of the council members for to nominate themselves to be on that committee. Mayor Brook isn't here, so she can't nominate herself, so I would start by nominating her.
I would really like a thorough explanation of what the policy committee is supposed to do, what their goals are, what the purpose is, and what would be under discussion.
Sure, that seems reasonable. And Councilmember French, would you like to talk about that since we...
So, I mean, I can just give you what I think. In my mind, a policy committee or policy review committee would accomplish a couple different tasks. We've already, done kind of some amount of the work creating policy as a council, and that's time consuming, and sometimes you get way down the details, and sometimes it still feels at the end of the day that there were things left on the table or items that you could have resolved better. And so to have a subcommittee looking, going through and helping us do the first steps of drafting policies that we're interested in moving forward, whether those policies eventually, I'm not sure the process, we can have a discussion about whether they, in some cases, would originate in the committee and then go to specific commissions that had jurisdiction, or whether they would come from those commissions to the policy committee, to the council. But,
I'm sorry, sir, this is clear as mud, so.
Okay, so to do some of the work of drafting policies before they come to the council so that we can have a more professional, or not more professional, but a more thorough review of some of the details. As we've had certain policies that we've come up with ourselves, we find that doing that work is sometimes very tedious and not everyone has the same level of interest. And so having a committee that is interested, that could go through that to make sure that our policies are well thought out before they reach the council so that our job can be easier in that regard. And then the second purpose was to take, there are certain, policies that we have already in our municipal code that we might want to readdress. And to have a committee that can be the tool to take those through that process. And then, like I said, either toss them to the council or to relevant commissions.
So I want to back up just a minute, if you're done, and say, I think I jumped the gun a little bit, and I think we need to back up and decide as a council that we actually want to have this committee first.
Right.
So, Councilmember Sherman Warren, you wanted to, do you want to speak to it as well?
Yeah, I mean, as the legislative branch of the city government, we need a mechanism to be able to bring forward policies, work collaboratively with city staff and with the public on figuring out what the best policies are, what the best ordinances are to enact for the betterment of Port Angeles. And it's taken me a long time to figure out how to even drop a bill. And I know that other council members haven't necessarily appreciated the way that that's happened. So I think we need a mechanism for bringing forward policy, and I hope that this would help in making that a better process.
Bringing forward what policy, whose policy, and how much time is we spent, and then so I really don't know what this group is going to do, and I don't understand the...
I can give you a concrete example.
Pardon me?
Councilmember King, I can give you a concrete example.
I'm sorry, could you speak louder?
Sorry, so for example, city staff are working on a sign ordinance, or that's in the work plan. That's a policy change to the city code. At this point, the mechanism that's going to happen is that is going to be dropped on us at some point as, hey, here's Thursday evening, here's your council packet, you're going to decide on this on Tuesday. What the policy committee could do is basically serve as a subcommittee of the council that would work with city staff to review the draft sign ordinance before it comes to the council packet, so that we've at least had a cooperative process between staff and council on doing the legislative process of the city.
We had a lot of committees in the past and kind of unraveled that, and we're getting, I guess it sounds like this committee is going to get, I'm not really entirely sure what this committee is going to do, but it's going to review suggestions, I guess, from the council. I don't really understand the parameters. I don't really understand the objective. I don't understand the direction. I don't really understand which policies that they will be working through. And I don't really understand the need for this committee.
I just have a quick question also. Where do these policies originate from? Is this, is this going to be a blanket review of the ordinances? Is this going to be the mechanism for creating new ordinances? So that a policy review committee reviews policies, but where do these policies come from? I mean, who creates the agenda for this committee? And so I guess I'm also not clear. Does staff come to this committee and say we're thinking of this, or you go to staff and you say that we're thinking of this, and is it hashed out that way? In other words, where does it start? I mean, what's the foundation of the committee? I'm not getting that either, so please help me there.
To me, both of those sound appropriate. I would love a collaborative process. I'm of the opinion that any good ideas should be entertained. It is our job to create legislation for the city of Port Angeles and to be that branch of government. I would love a collaborative process. Like I said, if council members have good ideas, we have a housing crisis in our city. Is our objective to do nothing? Is there policies that could help alleviate housing issues? I think there are. I would like to advance those policies. I would like to not be the only person that has ideas about that, because I don't think I'm the most qualified person to have ideas about that. I think there are a lot of people that are qualified to have ideas on what policies we have on the books that are stifling development or are in the way of those goals. What policies that we don't have on the books that could encourage certain things.
Couldn't we ask staff for a report on our concerns to review current policies? It's so broad.
Yes.
And I really am not in favor of just piling on staff at this time. We have so many important projects that we are the priority for the citizens of Port Angeles, and our staff only has 24 hours in the working day, it seems.
I think that's a good point. I do, and I would say that one of my goals as a council person is to find ways to assist staff in running the city in ways that are, legally appropriate to the station that I sit in. So, the city council is the legislative body of the government. I don't think staff should be doing legislative work. I think we should, and I think we should take that responsibility on, work collaboratively with the experts in their fields, and do our job.
Sounds like we're doing staff work.
So, a couple of points of clarification, or not really clarification, but my sense of one of the things in the meeting when we were talking about it is we do have a number of council members who really enjoy policy, and they like talking about it, they like looking at it, they like thinking about it, and whether there are areas for improvement. And so I think if there are council members who are interested and have the time and want to put it into it, it's not necessarily a bad thing for them to dig into some of policies that may need some reworking and come up with some recommendations so that staff doesn't have to do it, but working with collaboratively with staff so we're not doing something that doesn't make any sense. But then those things can get to council more quickly. That's sort of my takeaway from the meeting about a value of having this committee.
And just to add to that, not only can they get to council a bit more time efficient, polished when they do get to the council.
Do you want to say something? Yes. I don't mean it that, I could hear you about to say something. Sure.
So, because I've been down this road this year already, I'm not in favor of 3 individuals essentially reworking policy using staff time to look at reworking that policy and then taking the chance of getting blindsided again by another policy. And this is a staff job. I understand the thought behind it. I was at the think tank. And part of me is in favor of it, but The other part is there's a minority of 3, and that's as far as that can go. If those 3 decide on discussion, that can get all worked up and not go to any of the rest of us until after it's presented to council. In light of what occurred this year already, I am very apprehensive to support anything like that at this moment.
One of my goals is to prevent what happened earlier this year from blindsiding people. I think that I agree with you on that point.
So I'm going to recommend that we table this topic for the next meeting and maybe write up a description of the committee to clearly articulate the goals and objectives and bring it back at a later meeting.
May I speak on this?
Yes.
So right now, the legislative branch of this government can propose legislation through either the mayor, the city manager, or a majority vote of the city council. So earlier this year, I proposed a draft ordinance, and a number of council members are upset that they didn't know about that prior to going on the agenda. And the issue is, we make decisions in open meetings. So we can't have the entire council be talking about the decision. So one option we could have is use some of the think tanks for actual policy deep dives on specific proposals where we can workshop them before being in a business meeting and end up workshopping them for hours in this setting. I think that might work as well, but we need to have a clear mechanism to drop a bill because that's our job, and otherwise we're abdicating it.
We have a city attorney who is more than willing to speak to you morning and night. You can walk into his office, you can email him, you can telephone him, and he will meet with you on drafting legislation. We pay him, and he's there. But we have gotten away from 3 people having the power to go through policies and research and say, aha, we'll change this, aha, we'll change that as a committee of 3. We have gotten away from that because we're a council of 7. We don't give the power to 3 to go in and make policy changes or suggest that. We've gotten away from that, and for those specific reasons, because we're a council of 7.
And Councilmember Kidd, we have, as a council of 7, prioritized issue areas for ourselves. The top 3 are housing, housing, and housing. And there is a number of specific things there: vacant properties, vacant houses, prioritizing infill development, dealing with stormwater, all of that. And we've already prioritized that as a council. I plan to work on finding best models for that and bringing things forward. We're waiting on the housing needs assessment before moving forward on that work. That doesn't mean we can't research and collaborate on doing that. So if the council doesn't want to work together on it, once I have time, I'll pick one of those that's at the top of our priority and start seeing if I can find some best models on that. I think that's my job, and I think that's why people are elected us to serve as the legislative branch of the city. Thank you.
Comment, please. I'd like to be recognized for this mic.
Okay, well, I would like to have a little more conversation, and then I think we've come to a place where the conversation clearly needs to continue. We're not going to make a decision about it tonight, and we needed some consensus on it. So I would like to hear what Councilmember Moran has to say, and then I don't think we even need a motion to just...
I understand, Lindsay, I understand the fact that we are the legislative branch. We are also sort of a board of directors. And if you, in my experience with board of directors and legislative bodies, the actual legislators don't do the staff work. They have staffs that do the work for them. Then they bring that proposed legislation or corporate rule or whatever you want to put, what label you put on it. But we're not the staff members. We don't do that work. We judge the work of the staff. If we don't approve of the work that they've done, we send it back down to them and tell them to redo it. But we're not the staff. We are the final decider, no question about it, and that's what the legislative branch is. But you have to understand the difference between staff work and legislative work and decision making. And so the staff does not make decisions, they make recommendations. We can direct them to do research and come back to us with recommendations, but we do not conduct the actual staff work, the research work. We can if we want to, but that's traditionally not our role. Our role is to take what staff, committees, whatever you want to call it, whatever recommendations they bring to us, we then make the final decision. We approve, disapprove, or send back for further work. Those are the three options that this body and anybody in this type of facility has. And so, again, I agree with you, we're the legislative process, we're the final word, but we are not the research entity of this city. We're not. We pay people to do that for us.
Okay, I have a response, but Councilmember French was.
Just really quick, there's a difference between drafting legislation and creating policy. We are tasked with creating policy. We don't have to draft legislation. Our city attorney is very capable and very intelligent, and I absolutely agree that he is available for those purposes. Creating policy is our job.
Okay. With that, I think we should move on, and we can bring this up at a future council meeting, or at a future think tank, maybe a better place to have a little more of a work session about this policy committee idea.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I would like to know, when you mentioned future think tank, I thought think tanks we were going to sit down and discuss some items, but is this think tanks into infinity? We are keeping staff here on overtime on Tuesday nights, and I think at some point we need to wrap up the think tanks. I think we have to have some type of organized expectation on the think tanks, but it's not something that all the council can attend every single time, and I believe, I just really don't like keeping staff here on overtime as much as we can, just without any further limitation. Are we going to limit the think tanks? Are they going to, what is the plan for the think tanks?
To clarify, Councilmember Kidd, there was one staff member at the think tank.
Okay, even if there's one staff member, but where I attended, there was more than one.
I'm sorry, point of order, please don't interrupt. And so the question I have is, do you want us to use more staff time or not use more staff time? Because it's a little unclear, because you're saying you want everything to go through the staff. That's going to use a lot more staff time than us deliberating. Do you want us to deliberate as a body of 7? If so, we have to do it in an open public meeting. Otherwise, we can only talk on an issue to other council members. So I'm not clear what you want in those two situations.
How long are the think tanks going to go on?
I hear your concern, and I don't know the answer to that. The think tank was something that we agreed upon, that was Mayor Brooks' idea, and I think I would defer to her to answer that question, because she was the one who came up with it, and she may have a very clear vision and plans. So let's remember to get that clarification from her.
Absolutely, but the mayor serves at the pleasure of the council. It's up to us to direct the think tank. The mayor serves at our pleasure. So when it was started, there was no definition on ending, and I'm just asking.
Right, and I don't have an answer for you this evening.
I agree with you, Sherry. I think we should find ways to be more productive at that time.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. West.
Number 2.
So number 2 on the list, I did want to draw your attention, being that part of the evaluation of moving forward with any council action on the alternate route, and as I understood it from the think tank, that was a recommendation moving in the direction towards the planning commission. I wanted to make sure that council received an update from last Wednesday's planning commission meeting, and I'm going to ask Allison Brecky to come to the mic and share with you the results of last week's planning commission meeting.
Council. Allison Brecky, Planning Manager. I'll get used to that one day. I just, as Mr. West mentioned, I just want to give you, I'm just going to let you know that the Planning Commission met last Wednesday. Can you hear me okay? And to consider the motion that you made in reference to the comprehensive plan amendment. It was another meeting with great discussion, and the end motion, I'm going to read it directly from the minutes, and I'm more than happy to answer questions. Commissioner Hopkins made a motion to refer City Council to the Planning Commission's May 23rd unanimous approval of PZ 18-23, the 2018 Comprehensive Plan Amendment, citing 3 conclusions in the staff report of that date. Recognizing the 4 tasks the Planning Commission were assigned to review, Chair Schwab seconded the motion. And all of them, it passed with a 5-1 vote. One commissioner did not support that motion. And we are 1 down, so I think that's a 5-1 vote. Any questions for Ms. Ricky?
When will the audio and the signed minutes be available for that meeting?
Signed minutes would not be available until following next following a June 25th meeting, and the audio is available now. I don't have it with me, but it's available to.
It's not available on the website.
We can add it to the website.
Thank you.
So procedurally, my question around that is, we addressed at the last meeting, we passed a resolution stating that our current comp plan is in compliance with Growth Management Act and postponed the amended date to June of 2019. So in light of the Planning Commission's recommendation, do we need to schedule a public hearing about that? Is there anything we need to do tonight, I guess is my question about that.
So,
I'm sorry, point of clarifying question. What is the Planning Commission's recommendation? Is it sending it right back to us?
It's referring the council to their previous recommendation, which was in support of the 2018 Comprehensive Plan Amendment. You're welcome.
So from a procedural perspective, I found that decision by the Planning Commission very relevant, because I think that as contemplated in the think tank, the desire was to integrate and evaluate the alternative transportation route as part of the comprehensive plan review. And with Planning Commission taking that action and suggesting that it go back to City Council, that is, as you can see, a bit of a conflict between what their recommendation is now versus what your recommendation was intended to be as followed through to the think tank. But certainly, this is in council's court relative to taking action, relative to following through on the alternate route and your desire to have a motion to move that forward.
So it makes sense to me to come to a conclusion on the comprehensive plan before we move forward on the alternate route, because it would be addressed in certainly in the comp plan a little bit differently than we had talked about. You have a question, Councilor?
Well, it seems like if we are interested in doing any sort of evaluation of the alternate truck route, the comprehensive plan amendment process happening right now seems like a wasted opportunity on some level to not tackle the site. So I would say that I appreciate the Planning Commission's recommendation. I think that they are saying that their amendment as proffered to us is a good amendment, and I have no problem with that. But if we are planning on at least taking the year, we can ask them to review the validity of the alternate truck route, and if whatever decision they come to, I think that that's fine with me. I don't know, did I ramble too much?
I think we're doing the people of Port Angeles a disservice by not being specific on where this alternate route is, because it leaves it ambiguous, and we should have a plan that, points us in a direction. If we're giving people a map, which the comprehensive plan hopefully is a map of where we're going as a community, that map should actually lead somewhere, and not just say, out there's a rainbow and a treasure chest, and you can go find them, but where are they? Where are they in our city? And the alternate route is a major decision, and it needs to be in the comprehensive plan with enough specificity that people know what we're planning.
And just a clarification for those who were not at the think tank, it was just a conversation about future plans, laying the groundwork for the potential for something different, not something that we're saying, this is my interpretation, not something that the group that was present said, we want to start this process tomorrow, but
I would just say that it was a lively conversation.
it was a lively conversation.
Would it be appropriate for us to have a joint meeting with the planning commission?
So that actually was a discussion item, a part of their meeting last week. That suggestion was made. It was not an official motion, but they essentially emphasized that they would like to hear from the policymakers what policies they would like the planning commission to look into further. There was some confusion of what direction council is directing them in.
And I think that's reasonable of them. We were not as clear as we could have been.
So council, I don't think the intent was to present you with the official recommendation from planning commission tonight. I think ultimately we need to turn that recommendation around to you formally, but we felt that it was important to inform you of that in recognition of the additional direction that was desired as a result of the think tank. There is absolutely merit in identifying an alternate route and looking at that for the long term, but ultimately, if council wants to move that item forward, and if you feel that that is within the purview of planning commission as the best source, it's simply a matter of, because the think tank was not set up for action to be taken, council would need to take action and make that directive tonight.
So, yes, Councilmember Sherman.
I'll make a motion to request a joint meeting with the planning commission to discuss next steps with the comprehensive plan and specific issues that the council would like planning commission recommendations with regard to the comprehensive plan.
So just a point of clarification, because I heard a couple of different things. Are we able to have a meeting with the planning commission? I just want to be sure before we spend time discussing that idea.
I don't believe there's anything that would prohibit a joint meeting with the planning commission.
You are able to do that, you wish.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. I was told that we don't have joint planning meetings so that they can remain independent in their decisions.
My interpretation of what we're talking about is not to discuss decision-making, but simply to give planning commission, to have a conversation with planning commission about what kind of issues we're interested in having them discuss, which would not sway a decision, I don't believe.
Okay, but I just would like a little guidance from Mr. West, because that topic has come up before, and I was told there's a specific reason why we don't have joint meetings.
And Councilmember Kidd, I think you're correct as well in that oftentimes we've encouraged council members not to attend planning commission because council has specifically appointed the planning commission to be an independent body to make decisions on their own. And it's certainly noteworthy that an individual council member coming to a planning commission meeting may have significant influence over the outcome and the decision making at that meeting. However, I do think that when you do a joint advertised meeting to discuss important policy direction in the purview of the Planning Commission as well as in the purview of council, it is not uncommon to hold joint meetings between council and Planning Commission.
Thank you for that clarification. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, which is to have a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
And just, do we want to have the discussion about the alternate route at that meeting?
I think that would be a wise idea. But that, again, maybe we should have a consensus on that. I don't think we need a motion, but,
I mean, it's fine with me, I just want to make sure that we weren't leaving a motion.
I don't think we had a motion about the alternate route, so is there a feeling about continuing it to that?
Well, how do we come up with an agenda?
Yes, okay, that was my point. Before we have this meeting, let's put together an agenda, and if we're gonna have whatever discussions on it, you know, the agenda should be published ahead of time, and if the alternate route is one of them, fine, but, you know, we need to have an agenda ahead of time, we need to have that agenda published ahead of time, so everybody knows what we're gonna be talking about. I'm a little nervous about, I voted for it, but I'm a little nervous about a joint meeting. Again, this is an independent body that makes recommendations to us. We don't want to impose a certain direction on them that may or may not be appropriate. So, again, I voted for a joint meeting, but I would like to see a very strict and detailed agenda before this meeting takes place.
Thank you, and I think a point of clarification is that this would also be a meeting that results in no action on the part of either organization?
So Deputy Mayor and Council, what would be very helpful for staff, and we can help the council with this too, if you could discuss tonight in very general terms what you envision to be the agenda items. We can provide you at the next council meeting in the information section a proposed agenda for that meeting that you can discuss further to make sure that we have it right. But I think it'd be very helpful tonight. You did vote, and again, maybe I don't have good ears sometimes, but you did vote to have a meeting. Now we really need to discuss what is the purpose of that meeting, the general topics, so that we can wrap our arms around the agenda for that meeting.
I certainly have ideas on agenda items. I would love introductions. I'm reading through the notes of planning commission meetings. I've been very impressed by the comments that those commissioners have made, so I would love to have some introductions. And I think we should talk about the comprehensive plan review, and I think we should talk about the cross-town alternate routes.
Okay. Any other ideas?
I agree on the specific location for an alternate route. I know that city staff has suggested including the bike routes data that was recently conducted in the comp plan. I'd like to also consider bike boulevards, which provide different facility for different kinds of users of kids. I'd also like to discuss parking downtown and in connection with that housing downtown. I'd like to discuss planning for post-earthquake tsunami redevelopment. I'd like to discuss infill development. And I'd like to discuss the city's role in housing infrastructure.
I think that's an awfully long list for an agenda from one council member, but you're certainly very creative, sir. I would like to limit the agenda to a very few items and not have a complete long laundry list. I would love to see a discussion of our waterfront improvement project and where it's going. We've worked very hard to bring it up to the beautiful downtown waterfront that we have now, but that's just a portion of what it's going to be. I'd like to review what's been done and where that's going. I think that's appropriate. There's just, I would like for us to not just on a moment's notice come up with the agenda right now, but I don't want it to be 20 items because we really need to be specific.
Let me clarify. That list of items is things that I think I would like the planning commission to weigh in on as we think about the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is supposed to be guiding the document for the city and how we're going forward. And these are areas that I don't think we've thought through as a community, or areas where I think we could be more specific in the comprehensive plan. So we don't need to solve all of these, but these are things that as we think about, what we resolved last week, or at our last council meeting 2 weeks ago, was to set out a timeline for a year review of the comprehensive plan to give us enough time to get through the major issues. So these are specific items that my ideal would be the planning commission gives us recommendations, thinks through these issues. Parking downtown and housing downtown, that is a meeting in and of itself. But if we're not clear on that, we're not creating a comprehensive plan that really guides us, and I think that's a deficit.
I'm a little confused on this crosstown route. Are we looking for the planning commission to tell us where they think it's best to go? Are we looking to come up with that together? Are we looking for staff to give us ideas on where it should possibly go? And maybe sometimes you stop to think that you might be boxed in a corner.
Deputy Mayor, Council, can I add just a little bit more than that? I promise I'll leave it all to you.
You're okay.
So, I'm just going to give you a little bit of my perspective over the past, quite frankly, 15 years, maybe longer, on this issue, the cross-town route or the alternate truck route, whatever you want to call it. This has been something that has been discussed in great length at many times by many different councils. I'm sure it's been weighed in by other bodies, including the Planning Commission. I think one thing that may be very helpful is to understand the history and some of the effort that has already gone into this topic that has been weighed in by many different, again, city councils, for instance. It recently was taken out of the capital facilities plan, the specific cross-town route. I think it would be helpful if the council maybe dedicated some time in a work session format or some format where you can get all of the history, if you want to do that jointly with the Planning Commission, to bring everybody up to speed. So at least when you're moving forward discussing it, you have all of that history, all of that effort, the pros and cons. There's a lot of information out there. To try to start from scratch again, I would think not only would it do a disservice, it may not give you the full picture that would be helpful when you come up with something that is extremely important to the city. So again, I would just recommend that a good starting place would be to make this a topic in itself, and maybe this is a topic with the Planning Commission just to spend a good deal of the time to get all that history. It will take a little bit of time for staff to put that together, but I'm sure it's something that we could do, and I think it'd be very beneficial for this council and likely for this Planning Commission.
I agree, and you had a question about, Councilmember Meredith, about whether we're asking them for recommendations on all of these things, and my sense is that ultimately we might be, so having a conversation about the sort of what we're thinking about is useful. I really do like the idea of having a meeting and using it to get some background on where we are today, because I think we do have a lot of good ideas, and knowing the history about why it is the way it is, I think is useful for us moving forward. Is that enough direction? Do you?
Yeah, I just want to clarify. Maybe there was something specific about an alternate route in the capital facilities plan previously, and that's been removed, but ICTR 1799 truck route at Highway 101 intersection in the parking lot for $6 million, that's part of the alternate route. And by not acknowledging that in the comprehensive plan, we're not being honest with people in Port Angeles.
Okay. Okay, one more, let's have one more comment and then move on to number
Do we
three.
need more direction for the agenda for
Right.
for a joint meeting? Because the one thing I would like to just say about that is I would for us to keep the topics as broad as possible so that we don't run the risk of micromanaging our committee.
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, I was just saying, I would like, if we do have an agenda, I would like the topics to be as broad as possible so we don't run the risk of micromanaging our own committee.
So council, if I may, I would recommend the following agenda, keeping the topics broad, recognizing that many of the topics already mentioned may fall into one of these categories, but in view of the minutes and the discussion at Planning Commission, as well as what we've heard council say tonight, the suggestion of staff would be to have 4 items on the agenda. Item 1 is introductions. Item 2 is something that was discussed by Planning Commission, and that is roles and responsibilities. Item 3 would be comprehensive plan review, and item 4 would be alternate route. I think that might cover all the issues discussed.
I think that sounds good. Thank you very much. And number 3.
Did we vote on that? Sorry, just to check.
We did vote to, I don't think we need to vote, they just wanted some direction. Did we capture number 3?
Yes, Madam Deputy Mayor, could we please put a time limit on this meeting?
Yes.
The upcoming meeting?
The upcoming meeting? Yes.
Yeah, but the joint meeting with Planning Commission, we need to be very specific about our time limit, just to be considerate of everyone's time involved.
So what would be a standard, somewhere between an hour and 2 hours, I would think? Hour and a half, 2 hours.
Council staff would suggest a 2-hour work session, and we will get back to you on the suggested dates and times that might work for both parties.
Thank you. Fair enough. We could do a retreat. Okay, number 3. I don't even remember what it was. Sorry.
Council, item 3 was
Right, the housing.
the desire from the think tank to create a housing task force. And I do want to mention that Ms. Brecky also did bring up the suggestion of adding some additional parties to be included in the list that was discussed at the think tank, including the Olympic Medical Center, Peninsula Behavioral Health, and the Coast Guard.
I see. The list we developed was based on City of Vancouver and who they included, so those are great suggestions, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I'd be in favor of that committee because I think that when we talked about those from the community, to be on that committee, that is a broad spectrum that's going to represent all aspects of housing in our community. And it won't just be narrow focused on one specific focus on our housing problem in the community. And I know that there were some folks that stepped forward already that wanted to do that. I know that, there are many agencies that represent homeless, that represent the realtors, that represent the building industry, banks, economic development, businesses. All those will affect our future moving on with the housing.
So how about, not having a representative from the Builders Association or the Realtors Association seems like we're leaving a void.
They are on the list. Do you have the list? Could you
I'd be happy to
review it?
read the list from the
Yeah.
think tank.
Thank you, because I know not everyone has seen it.
All right.
The list from the think tank was the Housing Authority, the Realtors, banks, Planning Commission, church, county representative, Builders Association, North Olympic Development Council, and the mayor. And as I mentioned before, staff is suggesting we also add OMC, Olympic Medical Center, Peninsula Behavioral Health, and the Coast Guard.
Okay, good.
I think that's a really great list, and I'm excited to see what they could do. Do we have a motion? We need a motion to approve the creation of the Housing Task Force.
That would be ideal.
I move that we create a housing task force. with the, using the list provided by staff as the base.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to say I'm very happy with this result. I appreciate staff listening to our suggestions and ideas and making it better, so thanks.
Councilmember Kidd, do you have? Okay. All right, all those in favor of creating a housing task force, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that wraps up I-1. On to I-2. And I'm going to ask, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, so my apologies. Councilmember Sherman-Warren, could you discuss this issue? Could you start the conversation, please?
Yeah, so I would suggest we think of this as a climate action plan work group or committee. And a number of citizens for a number of years have been saying, hey, city council, hey, city staff, get on this because it needs to happen. And we have not done so. At this point, we've been missing out on state funding opportunities by not having a climate action plan as well. So it's hurting us financially by not having taken action on this. I'd like to see us start working on it, and I suggest that we do this collaboratively with community stakeholders, taking the lead with support from city staff and council. So rather than Bob lobbying us every 2 weeks, Bob can have a seat at the table because of his broad knowledge about it, and whoever else wants to participate as well. Again, a broad stakeholder constituency looking at mitigation and adaptation. So my suggestion would be to nominate the empty chair, the mayor, as the work group coordinator for making this happen.
Having spoken with her a little bit about this issue, I believe she would accept the nomination. Does staff want to address this at all?
So we certainly appreciate the public input that we've received on the topic, as well as the passion of council and the desire to move forward with that item. I do think it's important to recognize that we have a very full work plan already this year, and I think it's important that council be well aware that this is an exercise that staff would very much like to participate in. And for that reason, I think there would be some value in holding this item and beginning this item in 2019. I appreciate there's different perspectives than that on city council, but I would tell you that it's important with this type of plan that staff be involved, engaged, invested in the outcome of such a plan so that it's put to use on a regular basis at the front counter, as well as we work with different developers in the community. So I think there would be a value to really having staff involved in the project. I'm concerned from a resource perspective and the number of other projects we have going on this year that I do feel it would be far better if we could hold off and schedule it either in a strategic plan for 2019 or part of the 2019 work plan.
Thank you. Councilmember French?
I would just like to agree with Nathan. I think that I'm 100% supporting this idea. I do think that we are piling on a lot of work for 2018, and we run the risk of doing 5 things poorly rather than doing 3 or 4 things well. And so I love the idea of creating this for 2019.
I totally agree with Councilmember French. We must have staff engaged in this, and we've already put so much on their plate. This cannot be done poorly, and it cannot be done without staff fully engaged. We're creating its cause and effect. If we cause this to happen, it will create an effect. And we have to do this right. So I am in favor of it being put on hold until 2019 when we can all work on this together properly.
Any other comment from anyone else? Okay, I just want to say I think it is critically important. And I do want to be respectful. I do want to balance that with the fact that sometimes work feels a lot like work, and when there's something that you can do at work that feels exciting and interesting to you, I don't want you to miss out on that opportunity. And so I think while timing is certainly, things aren't slowing down, they seem to be going exponentially faster. I would like to ensure that staff has an opportunity, not just because we want their buy-in, but because it's an opportunity to get an even broader group at the table and give them an opportunity to do something fun with their job. So I also would be in favor of acknowledging that it will happen, making a commitment to doing it, and starting it in early 2019. So I guess we need a motion.
I move to resolve to prioritize developing a climate action plan in the 2019 strategic plan and staff work plan. Is that gonna work?
Community work plan.
It's your work plan, come on.
Do we need to clarify that?
What was that question again?
Do we need to, I'm asking you how serious you are, do you want to say community work plan, or do you want it to say,
Oh, absolutely, 2019 community work plan.
Okay.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes unanimously. All right, we are on to council reports, and I will start to my left with Councilmember Kidd, please.
All right, council, I keep following up with Public Works, and welcome, Mr. Park. We're delighted to have you in that seat this evening, and we're glad you're here. I keep bugging Public Works, what's happening on the fencing on the bridges. I just keep getting an update. And so what, if council would agree, what I'd like to work on planning is a community grand opening of the bridges when we get the fences up, a community celebration, because we need to take back our bridges emotionally. And I'd like to plan some type of event when the fencing is completed that we can, we can have everyone out, maybe, I don't know, maybe a potluck, have a band, have close the 8th Street bridges to traffic for a couple of hours so the community can come and we can just change the entire perception of the bridges to our new community bridges in a joyful way, in a positive way, and just kind of take back the bridges for the community and together celebrate that the new fencing is up, the community pulled together, they made sacrifices, we all pulled together and made it happen. And it's something to really celebrate. So if council agrees, I would like to work in that direction with other community elements and groups to see if we can put together something kind of fun.
I like that idea.
Oh, I got your thumb, okay. So all I don't need a motion, I just need some thumbs. Okay.
Street party on the bridges.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay. Can't even remember what I've done in the last couple of weeks, and I didn't bring my notes with me, my apologies. Was the rodeo between the meetings? So I did have the opportunity to be a judge at one of the obstacles during the Clown Transit bus rodeo. And it gave me a whole new appreciation for how challenging it is to drive a 35-foot coach and not hit things when you're making tight turns, especially right turns. That was the obstacle I was judging, right and left turns. So that was really fun and great to see so many participants. I think that's all I have tonight.
So I applied for and I was accepted to the Association of Washington Cities Legislative Priorities Committee. And that's a committee that will be looking at what the state legislatures what state legislation will best support cities in the coming state legislative session. I'll be participating in 2 subcommittees. One is the Economic Development, Public Works, Transportation Subcommittee, and the other is the Fiscal, General Government, Energy, and Telecom Subcommittee. One of those meets July 12th. So if anyone, council, staff, public, has recommendations on what priorities the Association of Washington Cities should lobby for in state legislation, please don't hesitate to let me know, and I'll try and push those things forward if I agree with them. Again, economic development, public works, transportation, or fiscal, general government, energy, telecom. We as a council in our joint meeting with the county commissioners brought up the issue of the age to purchase tobacco in our state. This is an issue because tobacco, cigarette smoking is the #1 cause of preventable death in the United States. Some of the statistics are that it kills more people annually than cocaine, alcohol, heroin, fire, suicide, homicide, AIDS, and auto accidents combined. So it's a major issue. Most people who get addicted to tobacco get addicted as minors. And the age to purchase is 18. And an 18-year-old when you're in high school, so it's easy to get cigarettes when you're in high school. Bumping up that age to 21, both the public health and the tobacco industry agree would dramatically cut the number of people who get addicted to tobacco smoking. We discussed this as a council with the county commissioners, and there was general agreement to move forward on looking at tobacco 21 policymaking locally. And part of the reason for that is because the state legislature has failed to do that the last several years, at least 3 years, probably more. And part of the issue is the state gets tax revenue from tobacco sales. We refer to that in policy speak as a sin tax, or basically, something we don't like, we're going to tax it and make it more expensive so that people do less of it. And the problem is that the state is now addicted to its own sin tax. And so they're unwilling, state legislature is unwilling to do this. They've failed to do it for several years, even though there have been bills introduced in both houses, both chambers of the state legislature. So after discussing moving forward, the county commissioners began to discuss it more, specifically at the Board of Health. And one thing that we found was that there's a state law from 1993 that purports to do field preemption of local laws regulating what happens inside cigarette stores, tobacco stores. So it's a field preemption statute. The tobacco industry back in 1993 prioritized enacting state laws to prevent local governments from regulating the tobacco industry. So it's a policy priority for the tobacco lobby. And so the question becomes, what do we do about it? And one thing we could do is throw up our hands and say, the state's got a law, and that's the end of that. I guess we just lobby and say, state, please let us do what we need to do to prevent the #1 preventable cause of death in the United States, or at least here locally in Port Angeles, Collin County. We could also say, why do we have government? We have government to protect people's rights, health, safety, and welfare. And if we're not able to do that because the state legislature gave a gift to the tobacco industry by preempting local lawmaking in this area, we need to ask whether that state law is itself legitimate. And potentially the way to do that is to say to the courts, hey, ceiling preemption isn't something that fits in the American system of law. Ceiling preemption, just to clarify, is where the state sets a ceiling on health or safety regulations rather than setting a floor. We live in a system where we think more government is better, somewhat ironically, where we have federal government, state government, local government, and we use preemption as a way to figure out who has the power to decide on certain policies. Floor preemption is an idea where the federal government sets the minimums, for health, safety, and welfare protection. States can go above that, and the problem is that a lot of courts have said, well, the states can also create a ceiling on local governments. So the states can prevent local governments from going beyond the level of health and safety protection that the state has provided. I think a system that would make more sense is where the federal government provides the floor, states can go above that, and local governments, if they so choose, can protect their citizens even more. We fought a war over government saying that we couldn't pass laws to protect ourselves. That was the American Revolution. And you can go back to, I think 3rd, 4th, and 5th paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence, and it's all about he has prevented us from creating laws necessary to protect ourselves. So, this is an important issue for us as a community to say when our system of law isn't working to allow us to do what we need to do as a government, protect our rights, health, safety, and welfare for the people here. Well, what do we do about it? And I don't want us to just back down and say, since the state legislature says that it's the only ones with the authority to do this, then we're done. I think we should consider saying, hey, state, you don't have the power to take away our ability to protect our people, because that's not something that fits within our system of law. So I think we should continue to move forward on the Tobacco 21, even though we've hit a roadblock, which is the state legislature bowing down to the tobacco industry and preventing us from doing our job.
Point of question, Mr. Lohr, can we do something that would put us in legal jeopardy as a city? I totally agree with his feelings, but I'm looking at legally, are we allowed to do anything that would put us in a position of being sued or any legal liability by the state, because we can't do that, I don't believe, can we?
Well, to clarify, first of all, I believe that the proposal that was discussed does not directly put the city in any legal jeopardy. That's my understanding of it, at least, is that's not what it does. But can the city council take an action that puts you in legal jeopardy? Of course you do. Of course you can. Councils do that all the time. It's a matter of weighing the benefits and risks. Lots of things have risks, and councils make those kinds of decisions all the time. Now, there are some things that the federal government and the state government say you can't do, and my job is to recommend to you that you don't do those things. But as far as what you do, that's up to the council. I don't get to vote, I don't get a veto power. But apart from those things where the state or the federal government says you can't do those things, there's still lots of things that do put the government at risk, and quite frankly, the balancing of those risks against what you want to do and what you don't want to do, that's your job to make those policy decisions.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember French.
Okay, we've had a busy couple of weeks. I'll just go over a few highlights. I am, of course, the representative of this council to the Port Angeles Downtown Association. I attended their board meeting this past Wednesday, and I know that they've been doing a lot of work over the last probably year to change the direction of their organization. And I'm really hoping to see on our next council agenda a contract so that the city can have a final agreement, because I think we're at a point where we are there. This is an organization that's done a lot of work. It's had a lot of troubles in the past, but they're really moving towards a more professional place, closer to Mike. And I'm really interested. One of the things they're talking about is hiring some form of a director and maybe having some sort of partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. So I'm really excited where that organization is going. Like I said, hoping that we have something on our agenda to take action on at the next council meeting for that. And another thing, Council Member Lindsay Sherman Warren and I went to the high school last Wednesday, and we talked to a small group called the We Club, which is really active on campus on trying to address issues of bullying and racism and discrimination in general. We had a really great meeting. It was a small group of kids and the faculty advisor. We had a really great, honest meeting, and it was really encouraging to see that, there are people that are not willing to sweep those issues under the rug, but address them directly. And I think that's what we need to do as a culture, as a community. And that brings me to my next item, is today's a holiday. Many people don't know about it because we don't really officially celebrate it, but today is Juneteenth, which is a celebration of the emancipation of the slaves at the end of the hostilities of the Civil War. It specifically was a celebration of a General Order 3 that was read aloud in Texas at the end of hostilities on June 19th, 1865. So, happy Juneteenth, everybody.
Councilmember Moran.
We completed our first Maritime Festival last weekend, and to all reports, it was a successful event. The weather notwithstanding, the hardy folks of Port Angeles turned out in downpours, and so we're very grateful. The Maritime Committee is very grateful for the participation in the festival. We, Mayor Birch and I, awarded the Coast Guard 2 plaques, and they in turn awarded us 2 plaques, and so that went very well. And the search and rescue demonstration was spectacular. The tall ships really enjoyed their stay here and has already told us they'll be back. So the Maritime Festival is in the process of being planned for next year. We're having our debriefing meeting tomorrow and our first planning meeting for 2019 tomorrow. So I thank all of you who helped bring that to a successful conclusion, and we're looking forward to celebrating it next year. This morning, I did my meet and greet session at the Port Angeles Senior Center, and I would like to thank the Senior Center for their hospitality. They make me feel very comfortable there. They put my name on there, they put the fact that a city council member will be available in the reader board. They announce it through their PA system. So I would like to say thanks to the Senior Center. It was a very interesting discussion this morning, and so I appreciated that. And I just would like to make one further announcement. The Clallam County Amateur Radio Club is having their National Field Day, June 23rd and 24th. That's this weekend at the Clallam County Fairgrounds. The local Peninsula Hams provide backup communication for the North Olympic Discovery Marathon, as well as participating in mass casualty drills and National Guard exercises. And Ken, I don't know how involved the public safety sector is involved, the ham radio folks, but they're having a field day this weekend, and I plan on attending, and fascinating group of people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Council, for your reports. Let's move on to City Manager reports.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. We do have a couple reports in your packet, and since the director is fairly new, Steve, our interim public works director, you may want to wait a couple days before you ask him any questions about those reports, so we can at least find out who's responsible for them and send you in the right direction. Other than that, I will go over the July 3rd meeting date in a minute, but there are some action items that came out of tonight's meeting. One is that we will provide in your next council packet under information the draft agenda for the joint planning council meeting. We'll also in that time work on a date that works for both the council and the planning commission. We also will be putting in our 2019 community work plan, the Climate Action Committee, and we'll have that start early on in the year so we can get the full benefit of the year for that. We will be bringing back at a future council meeting, we won't be waiting too long to bring back the surplusing of the Morris Creek water line that was put off tonight. Also, the Housing Task Force, the creation of that happened tonight, and there'll be some staff support for that And those are the items that came out of tonight's meeting. Also, I want to send my safe travels for the three of you that will be traveling next Tuesday to the AWC conference. I think you'll have a great time. In fact, I know you will. It's a very good educational conference, and hopefully you've signed up for some good sessions. And with that, the July 3rd meeting date, there was a request to potentially move that meeting date because it's July 4th holiday. I also heard from some other council members that maybe moving that date would not be advantageous for some of the council members. But before we have a discussion of that, find out what the council's pleasure is, during the last staff meeting, there are some important dates that need to be identified, and Nathan can go over those since he was at that last staff meeting.
Relative to the July 3rd meeting specifically, we did ask staff as to items that were already scheduled for the July 3rd meeting, and one item is intended to be brought forward, I believe, by Abby Fountain. A second item is also scheduled, an important bid award for Public Works and Utilities. So for that reason, we would need to reschedule if the July 3rd date doesn't work for any reason. At this point, staff would probably recommend we go ahead and retain it, looking at scheduling and looking at the other potential dates that were out there. There really aren't many, particularly because we've got 3 council members traveling to AWC the week before, and we already have many work sessions and council meetings scheduled in the month of July. Additionally, I think it would be helpful to get clarification. I think there was also some discussion at the think tank relative to relocating the Department of Ecology presentation on stormwater, but I understand some work has also already been done on that, so some direction to staff relative to that July 3rd meeting date, and making sure that we know whether in fact you do want to direct staff to seek additional alternatives for Department of Ecology to make a presentation, or whether you'd like to try to maintain it at that July 3rd meeting date.
So just a clarification, my recollection was that Councilmember Meredith, your concern with the date was partly that you wouldn't be here, but primarily revolving around the Department of Ecology presentation. Is that accurate?
We had discussed it, and Nathan was going to see if they were willing to change that or not. And then the July 3rd meeting, I don't think we've had any call-ins with this council yet, but we've had several in the past. So that is also a possibility.
Can I ask as a point of information, who's not going to be able to make July 3rd on the council?
I will not be present in this room.
I will be present.
I will be present.
I'm planning to be here also.
And I,
If you're going to be president in the room, where are you going to be?
On the phone perhaps.
I don't have.
You can call in.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So you'll be present, available for the meeting then?
That's a possibility, yeah. That's what we did.
Super. I'll be here.
So then I think it becomes the issue of whether or not we ask staff to reach out to Ecology to reschedule. I think the rationale I heard, which wasn't unreasonable, is while it is just a council presentation, they are coming back in August for a public meeting, there are probably a number of members of the public who would like to be present for their presentation, and that the July 3rd date potentially makes that a little bit less available to members of the public. So that was just my understanding of where that request came from, so we can certainly have some conversation about that.
I do believe there is one item that is going to be on there that would shorten the timeline for potential contractors.
Okay.
If it was not on the 3rd.
Well, we're going to be here. I mean, it's a council meeting. They can come. I
let them come. Okay. So is the consensus that we should just leave it as it is, as it's currently scheduled, and move forward and make sure that we let people know that they're coming in August?
Yes.
Okay.
But I would also like to, if they're possible, I would like to have them here on the 3rd.
Well, that's what we're saying. So the third, they're coming to make a present. My understanding of the current plan is they're coming to make a council presentation on the 3rd. But I think it's important to remember that when they're making a council presentation, it is not a dialogue with the community. It's an opportunity for us to ask questions. And then they're going to come back at a yet to be determined date in August for a public meeting that would be held outside of council for the public to be able to speak.
Council, that is correct, and just for the record, we have yet to confirm that we have tentatively scheduled the 3rd date based on the think tank discussion. I didn't want to confirm that until we had the opportunity to get clear council direction this evening.
Okay, so let's move forward with the current plan. Okay, that brings us to, I'll just turn my mic off because that brings us to our second public comment period. We don't have anyone signed up. If there's anyone in the audience who would like to come up and speak with us, tell us about anything in particular, we'd love to have you. And just a reminder, state your name and address for the record, please.
Arthur Wojnowski. I'm going to be representing Papa, so we'll be using the address of 215 South Lincoln, I believe. I just wanted to let the staff and the city know, the council and the staff know that we are planning our first community event. And we're planning on having a movie at the park on July 28th. So we hope that you guys come out and support us. It'll be free. So everyone, we are going to be doing it at Dream Park.
That's great, thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? All right, seeing no one else rushing to the microphone, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much.